Okay, so we're going to start today with this brief slideshow that goes over the most critical information that needs to be known, and then we'll get into more detail later. So this is largely applicable to flood recovery, but some of this stuff applies in other crisis situations. So the number one thing that, actually before I even get into that, the number one thing I recommend that people do when they're dealing with this is to start a log book or a journal. This is a long, protracted process. A lot of people are displaced from their homes, their whole life's in turmoil. So in a regular time, this would be difficult to manage. So in this time, it's even more important that we don't try to depend on our brain to remember everything. So a notebook where we can add receipts, folders, handouts, stuff like that, and we can keep a journal of a log of who we talk to, when we talk to them, and why. People think they'll never forget, but over the course of months or things happening, things get fuzzy. And right now, these calls and these contacts, the things you do, can have a real big influence on how much money you get and how the life of the person is going forward. So the other thing I recommend is taking photos of those, so that as you go along, you have, if you lose that all your eggs in one basket, if you lose it, you've got some photos, just snap them with your phone on those individual pages to back up your stuff. So that's number one. The second most critical thing would be people getting the water out of their houses if they haven't yet. They haven't had their houses mucked out or mudded out or cleaned out, as they call them. A lot of organizations doing that, and the best way to do it, you can try to talk to them individually, but the best way to do that is to call the crisis cleanup number. So we'll go over that. Crisis cleanup is free. It's available to anyone in Texas at this point. And the number, you can call 311 in the city of Houston, or you can call 844-965-1386 or 800-451-1954. And what they'll do is they'll ask a series of questions. They'll ask how much water got in your house, if someone's elderly, if they need a tarp on the roof, stuff like that. And then they'll put that information in a database, and they coordinate with volunteer groups that are going out and doing this work. So that's the best way to get started. That stops duplication of efforts and make sure the right people show up to do the right work at your house. Once that's done and arranged, let's go back to the spreadsheet here. One important thing to do is, and I've heard from the crisis cleanup people and from people who dealt with this in Sandy, as crazy as it sounds, there's people who have gutted their house, taken everything out, lost everything, and at the end get a check for $2,000 or $3,000 from FEMA because there's no proof that their house wasn't just an empty shelf with just wood studs in it before, and that can just absolutely ruin people's lives. So they need to take photos, they need to document that stuff. Typically, in most situations, you would have to retain this stuff so that the adjuster could look at it. But if this is an unprecedented situation in a lot of ways, so if the material is a danger to health, which mold, mildew, rodent, stuff like that, then you're allowed to remove it. And pretty much everything's a danger to health. So what needs to happen is, before they start working, and there's this free cartoon that Compass 82, this is the group, the national group that did this with Hurricane Sandy, has put together. And they said about flood insurance claims, before you muck out, document the crime scene / disaster scene, treat it like that. So they advocate taking 7 photos, inside and outside. I tell people the easiest way to remember to do that is walk in the room, take a photo of the front door, work your way clockwise all around the room, one on the floor, one on the ceiling, and one on the water line. And do that in every single room, and do that outside too. So the front and back, all sides with the foundation and the water line mark. A lot of people aren't aware that even if you didn't know it's water in your house, the water sat around, it can damage the foundation. Water can start flowing underneath it, it can settle, and usually we have clay soil. That's a real problem. So that could cause problems down the line. So that needs to be included, and an inspection needs to be done by someone who's qualified of your foundation. The contents, every piece of personal property you're throwing away. So the contents of your fridge, all this stuff adds up. Inside cabinets and drawers, all appliances, get models in certain numbers if you can. And if it's safe, keep samples of your carpet or floor coverings, your trim, and any above average materials like granite countertops and stuff like that to make sure you get that extra value. The default is going to be a park and grade or builder's grade quality on stuff. So Okay, so that kind of covers it. Here's the notes on creating a log, so the spreadsheet notebook. The importance of the documentation. You don't need to just say, I had a couch, or I had a white couch, or I had a white couch from this furniture company. You need to say, I had this model. And if you can find more detailed links, the way insurance adjusters, my understanding is, insurance adjusters are getting this information. They get paid based on each case. So they want to move through the case, and they're getting paid on a per case basis for the most part. So now their interest is in doing a fair job and moving on. If you give them detailed information, it's going to make it easier for them to justify maxing out your claim or whatever. So it just makes their job faster and easier. The same information here applies to vehicles. We'll go over that a little bit too, but if you have a flood damaged vehicle, getting all the details, having all the receipts, stuff like that. It's too late to say that now that we have them. Any documentation you can give will help you get the most money possible. So, and other things, receipts, canceled checks, any kind of documentation you have, it's just going to make it easier for you by making it easier for the person who's handling the claim. When people are cleaning up, we'll go into more detail on this, but PPE is important, personal protective equipment. So you hear this thrown around N95 dust masks or better. 95 is about the particle rating. You'll hear N100, that's 99.97% or something like that filtration. This right here will be a 100. This is a full face. If you have an N95 mask and you're someone like me with a beard, doesn't work. Can't do it. You might be able to get a positive pressure mask, but there's a reason people in chemical plants aren't allowed to wear or to have beards, because you just will not get a good seal. Goggles should be non-vented. So, this is the most critical thing. The stuff is stuff, but if you get in there and you breathe this stuff into your lungs, depending on your sensitivity level, it can be really problematic. There's different kinds of mold, so most of it's fine, but you never know if it's the baddest. I'm telling people at this point, especially as this far along, you need to treat this stuff like someone would try to treat an asbestos remediation. So, if at all possible, and you can have a professional crew do it, don't do it yourself, but the reality is, with the scope of this and the time-sensitive nature of it, we have to get people in there quick to do this. So you have to be aware that everything, so you're wearing the goggles, you're wearing the mask, you have the gloves and the boots, and you should have clothing that's long sleeve that you are ready to possibly throw away when it's done, or cover yourself in a Tyvek suit. That's tough right now because it's really hot, but so hydration is going to be important. I've seen people will wear that mask, and that's great, and they're working, and they stop to take a break because they're sweating and they drink Gatorade. Well, they're going to pull that mask off and throw it on top of their head, and then just basically that elastic is going to just sit there and smash all the spores and dirt and who knows what else into the inside of the mask. And you take it off, stick it right back on your face, and now it's like chloroforming yourself. So that's just a little thing people might not notice. You would know if you were experienced with this, but you have to be aware of those procedures. Just be mindful of that stuff, washing your hands, stuff like that. So the reason goggles should be non-vented so that the dust can't get in the side and get in your eyes. It's miserable. It's going to be sweaty, it's going to be moldy. We live in a storm, but that's the way to do it to protect yourself. Covering open wounds and waterproof bandages. So there was a story not too long after the storm hit of a first responder who got the necrotizing fasciitis, or the flesh-eating bacteria, even though he was trained in water rescues as well. But this was early on, and you never know what's in that flood water. So if it's standing, do not leave yourself open. As long as the skin's intact, you're okay. But it's better to have boots and stuff like that. And wash and sanitize your hands frequently. So just be mindful of that. When you get in your car, when you're leaving too, you're clean. Don't sit in your car with that wet and moldy. Throw some towels or some plastic over your seat. As far as funding, we said, yeah, flood insurance, start there. Contact the insurance company and file a claim ASAP. If you don't have flood insurance or have damage that won't cover, apply for FEMA assistance ASAP. I've heard recommendations that people just apply for FEMA regardless. If you have flood damage, get the application and get the process started. I'll leave that up to you, but it's probably not a bad idea. It doesn't cost anything to apply for FEMA. If those two don't work and beyond insurance and FEMA, There's nonprofit organizations you can get assistance from. You can apply for a SBA, which is Small Business Association Disaster Loan, even if you're not a business. That's for personal people. And you can file an amended tax return and get a refund for uninsured losses back on your 2016. So that gets you some cash initially. And then we have a link to some resources here, especially with specific questions. Lone Star Legal Aid has a hotline, and they're great for that. So that concludes the quick version. We're going to touch on flood damage cleanup tips, which is a more detailed resource. This has items already talked about, so we have documenting with photos and video what's in the house. Notes on removing mold and links to more details on that. So this is just a more detailed version that's available, printed and available online of that. Notes on item removal, people taking stuff out. The first thing I would say that we need to add to here is work with the homeowner. You're going through someone's entire life here. You know, the contents of that drawer might be family mementos, it might be something from someone they lost. Don't just throw it out, you know, talk to them. They're going to be traumatized, exhausted, confused. So work with a plan. If you're working with the crew, make someone in charge. That person will be talking with the homeowner, and they'll be coordinating things so that you're not literally stepping over each other, people don't get hurt, you're not doing things in the wrong order. So the first thing we do is we begin by removing all the furniture items you remove from the house. So get all the stuff out of your way. If there's something that's going to be kept, put it in the back, let it on the backyard, let it dry out. You're going to try to keep it. If it's going to go to the front, there's notes on how to separate this. You want to separate this stuff into different piles. So vegetation and trees go in one pile. This all goes someplace separately later. Regular household garbage is in a separate area. Then you have hazardous materials. Then you have things from your house, so construction debris and items like that. And then finally electronics. And then they call it white box appliances like your fridge, your dryer, your dishwasher, large appliances like that. That's just going to help the process getting it out of there. And you want to make sure that stuff is set between the street and the sidewalk if possible. If it's further up, they might not grab it. They might not be able to reach it with the claw truck. And you want to make sure you don't have it up next to a fire hydrant or a pole, meaning they can't safely get it with the claw truck. One note that some demo guys have told me is when you're throwing out, especially sheetrock, which is going to crumble apart, it's a great idea to have buy a cheap tarp and throw it down. So at the end, that tarp can be picked up and thrown away. So you're not picking through nails and little stuff in your yard for months to come. And there's some more notes on here, like you should secure the fridge with duct tape. If it's still got food in it now and lost power, it's a disaster. You're going to open it. Notes about shutting off gas in individual appliances, but we tell people not to shut it off at their main connection unless they suspect a gas leak. If they suspect a gas leak, they should call 911. Here's the notes on the specific things about replacing items. The order to go in, that makes sense, is you want to start the front door, clear everything out, and then work your way further in. If you start at the back, and then you're working that way, you're walking past each other all the time. So start at the front, work your way back, go to the second floor, come to the staircase, work your way back. Flooring removal. After you get the furniture out, you want to get the floor out because you don't want to have all the sheetrock and stuff on top of the carpet, making it that much heavy. Especially there's carpet, it's heavy. The carpet padding's very heavy. You need to cut it apart. So that's the easiest way to do it. When you're taking out carpet, you need to fold it in half. Cutting it from the back helps. So you're not trying to cut through all the fibers of the carpet. Score it and pull it apart. Roll it up. Bring it outside in individual pieces. Be careful when you're taking all the stuff off too, because you're just going to have, you don't want to be kicking mold and dust up. So try to be aware not to flat things around. After the floor is out, some wood floors can be salvaged at this point, probably not. You have to be aware that some even tile can be porous and have stuff underneath it, so there's a good chance you may have to remove tile depending on how long it's been sitting there. Moving sheetrock and insulation. Get all the baseboards off. If there's water has migrated up, you want to pull up. Generally, the advice is pull to 4 feet because that's a full sheet. If the wall is wet and the sheetrock is wet, you can kind of just kick through it or pop through it with a hammer. If you're on a stud, you can kind of pull, and when you get up to the level of the tape line, the tape will pull. You can pull the tape, that's the seam between, and you're getting a nice clean edge all the way across. And then you can just pull that out. You don't really need any tools. I'd rather people not be using saws and stuff like that. The most you'll need is really a utility knife. You can kind of shake sheetrock, you can knock 2 nails in it, shake it, and pop the whole thing out in one piece. It makes it easier to remove it. So even if it's a 2-foot section, drywall is very cheap. Drywall is like $7 or $8 for a piece. But the current going right now has gone up double what it was, over $100 a sheet to have it installed, taped, and formed, or $120, something like that, from contractors right now. So the cost is the labor. So getting up to 4 feet is going to help. Once everything is removed, you want to take the insulation out. You want to take it out. Everything above 12 inches above, about a foot above the last moisture level. So if the drywall's dry, but you feel inside and it's wicked up a little bit on the insulation, reach in and pull out insulation up to a foot. Don't reach in and yank everything out, because then they can't get the insulation back in. And the insulation will only be on external walls. Internal walls are not insulated typically. So, but when in doubt, get it out. Cleaning and drying out mold mildew. People don't realize how long this takes. So, you want to get all the material out with brooms, wet backs, whatever. You can scrub the studs and flooring with 1 part bleach and 10 parts water. You can use mildewcide. Be careful you don't mix it with anything acidic, so you don't have harmful off-gassing, just bleach and water. And then you want to leave all the bedroom doors, closet doors, cabinets open. People who've had their houses open, even if they dried them out the next day and they've had it open, if you just have it sitting open right now with the AC running, it's probably not dry enough. The level of dryness you need, the FEMA recommendation here is 17%. So you can get a moisture meter for $30 on Amazon or at Home Depot. And that's pretty effective. It's a pin-type moisture meter. That's what you need. You can't guess. There's people who had the house open and fans blowing and the wall open for 5 days, and it's still 40-something% moisture. Now, and that's inside the wood studs, and that's in the wood on the floor. So thermal cameras can show that as well. It'll show up as blue on a thermal camera. But, with that and with the flooring, if you say flooring, you need to do a moisture check. As you're doing that, you need to make a log of that. People have gone around and said, oh, we need, trying to sell people on certifications. So we need to certify that your house is dry. That's not true. You don't have to have that. But for insurance purposes, if there's mold reoccurs without flooding, you're going to want to be able to document, oh, I made sure that I reached that 70% layer. So you can take a photo of it as you're doing the measurement, or write it down, the location. A photo is probably the best bet. In order to speed that happening, there's some links in the bottom that's more detailed. We pulled some items from the LSU Agriculture School, a detailed article they wrote for Louisiana last year about this, because apparently flooding just happens everywhere all the time now. And that's turning your AC lower. The AC removes moisture. You get it too low, it gets too cold, and you can have condensation, so you don't want to get it too cold. You can add back in dehumidifiers. They actually add heat to the room over the course as they're doing their thing and removing humidity. So that helps in that they're removing humidity, and it's bringing up the relative humidity level, so or lowering it. So that'll help, and you can run the AC even more. And you can even use space heaters because you need to do them safely. But having a space heater will bring up the temperature and dry, and then the AC is running, and the longer it runs, the better it does. You want to turn off. Well, if the AC runs, I think you're just better off just leaving it running. One thing that can help is not having more air leakage from outside. If the house is drier than outdoors, the moisture is going to want to migrate in and even out. So it's helpful to maybe just say we're going to use the back door or the front door and tape up around all the doors and the windows and remove all the drafts to kind of get the house sealed and get things dry. I think that's about it. And then fans, place them near, if you're running a heater, if you're running the dehumidifier, place them near that so that you'll get that dry air moving around. But yeah, just be careful. It's going to take days or weeks to get dry. You can't rush it. You can speed up the drying process, but you can't skip it. You have to wait till it's actually done. Here's a few photos here of the P100 masks. They can look like that, or you can have full face or half face. That's actually a respirator. So that'd be preferable, but this is good. 95 is the minimum in 95. And you'll hear NPO. Those just have to do with the resiliency of the mask, how long you can use it, and if it's oil resistant or not. But the filtration level is what's important. Let's see, and the last thing is going to be the actual curriculum. And we're going to go through this a little quicker here. This just has the detailed information in more details than what I've gone through before. We'll touch on just a few quick things that we haven't gone through. So we go through the removal process first. That slide in there with the details about how to document is in there as well. Electrical safety. If the water got it past the outlet, you can have an electrician check it. It's not that hard to actually do yourself, but it's hard to do yourself and know you've done well. So, food safety. If flood water got on something chunky, you can wash cans, you can wash some stuff. If you have to do anything with screw lids and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to get clean inside, so don't worry about it. There's food assistance for people. SNAP has been approved to cover not just food you can prepare, but hot prepared food. You can use it in the subway, you can use it to get hot food at the grocery store until September 30th. And the use of food bank locally is a good resource for that. There's some notes here on filing insurance claims, some more detailed information about that. If your claim is denied. One thing about FEMA, the actual wordage that FEMA uses, it seems like a lot of times people get rejected, and you can get rejected or denied for something as simple as like a typo. And FEMA's actual website, I think it says that we view the first refusal to you not as the end, but as the beginning of a conversation. They say so. It's baked in that there's going to be some back and forth with FEMA, so be ready for that. I've heard some horror stories about people dealing with FEMA in hotels. So people who are in hotels, a lot of times they'll say they have to be out, the next day, and the family's panicking and have been cleaning up and they're beside themselves about what they're going to do, and then at the last minute, something gets slid underneath the door that says, "Okay, you're extended for another 3 days." So it's horrible that happens to people, but if you know someone's staying in a hotel that's happening, tell them that that's just an unfortunate part of the process to just hang in there. If someone is in a hotel room too, legally, they do not have to leave. They are a tenant. They can force you to pay the rack rate on the door, which is very expensive, but they cannot force you out on the street if you're willing to pay the rack rate, which is on the inside of the door. When it comes to, I'll get to rental in a minute. So here's what FEMA can help with, some details about that. When it comes to, there's been some people talking about fraudulent FEMA inspectors. There's some notes in there that a FEMA inspector will have an actual ID. They will not ask you for any payment for anything, and they also will not be able to approve payment. They're there to check out, are you the person that's supposed to live in that house? Let's see your ID, proof that you live here, and look at the situation. That's all they're there to do. There's other things that FEMA can help you with too. So direct expenses caused by the storm. So if you did get sick from flood waters and cleaning up, there's separate help for that. Dental help if, you got chipped a tooth, evacuating, funeral, essential household items, stuff like that. And all that stuff, things that you're having to buy and replace, people should be saving receipts for the cleaning materials, for all that stuff. We have a link to if you provide, you're approved for traditional shelter assistance. You can look at the list of hotels, and that list of hotels is always expanding and contracting. So you have to check. Some hotels accept it, some don't. You don't have to be a U.S. citizen to apply for FEMA aid. Certain immigrants, asylum seekers, and stuff like that, there are exceptions. After you apply, you'll probably get an application for an SBA loan. It doesn't disqualify you from getting FEMA assistance, but that's something to look into. There's some notes about what to expect during the FEMA inspector's visit, and some reasons why you might be denied or why your grant might be insufficient, and some more details on that. There's just a lot of information there, so We're not going to get into all that right now. Disaster loans, Small Business Administration offers these low interest, long-term disaster loans to small businesses, private organizations, homeowners, and renters to help them with repairing or replacing their damaged property. The amounts and terms have to do with your financial condition. And the SBA is right there at FEMA recovery centers alongside. We have some information here about income tax deductions, and you can even borrow from your retirement fund. There's some added exemptions to that. Some of the stuff still applies, but they've made it a little more lenient. And there's even foreclosure relief from HUD. And the last bit here, DIY repairs and contractors. There's some detailed guides on that. There's details on how to dry out as fast as possible and mitigate your mold damage. What to do with textiles and furniture, how to recover paper records and books. It's difficult, but it's possible if they're important enough to you. Flood roofing, so getting ready for the next time. So maybe you don't put carpet back in, maybe you're going to put a ceramic tile, maybe you're going to stain the concrete, maybe you're going to put in water-resistant insulation and stuff like that. Information on garden, anything in the garden that got flood waters, throw it out. Watermelons, squash, all that stuff is still porous and it's got to be thrown out. There's things you can do to make your soil safe and to check your soil. The last thing, and probably one of the more important things, is working with the contractor. So finding a contractor, there are the fraudulent people out there. Obviously, it's not the majority of them, but it's enough of a thing where we have to watch out for it, and they're going to be targeting the most vulnerable people. So not just yourself, but let other people know. Some tips for that we've gotten from contractor groups in the area and builders associations. You need to know what your insurance policy covers and what those amounts are, so your insurance company will tell you that, so you know what resources you have to help you pay for the contractor. Be proactive in selecting a company. Don't just react to sales solicitations people come by. Not everybody that comes by is bad, but just be aware. A couple things, really most important thing is find if someone's local. That's a plus. How long have they been in business? And are they insured or bonded? Because if they come in their house, they step on a nail, they get hurt, that can come back on you and your obligation to pay that if they don't have the proper coverage. There's some apps being developed that will actually help you check contractors on the fly with this app, and when that's available, it'll be on the website. It's still being tested right now. You can check with the Better Business Bureau, but I would say if I'm checking with the Better Business Bureau and someone has a bad ranking, okay, if they have a good ranking, that's not necessarily enough. It tells you they don't have a bad ranking, but it's not everything you need to know. Ask if someone normally does business in that part of town, or are they coming from across town. Maybe they're there, they live in Cypress, they're coming to Katy because their nephew's house is there and they're working on his, but that's going to add time. Just like with, a lot of times you see lawn contractors, they'll end up having a whole street that they're taking because it just makes sense for them to push that mower down the street. They've already unloaded everything, so there's some economies of scale. The same thing should happen too if your contractor's working in that area. He's working with your neighbor, then you guys can team up on making sure that they show back up when you last see him, and it's easy for them to be overseeing stuff. There is no licensing for general contractors in Texas, so pretty much anybody can go get a DBA and hopefully get insurance and slap a sign on the door. Don't assume this because someone has a 713 or a 281 local number that they're local. People are hip to that. They'll go get a local number on a burner phone, so that itself is not enough. And ask for references. Anybody worth their salt is going to say, yes, here's some people I've done before, I'm working with now. So if they're hesitant to give you that, tell them to kick rocks. If they're hesitant to say, if they say don't worry about the paperwork, tell them no thank you. If it's right there in the name, contractor. If you're hiring a contractor, you need a contract. Just like anything else in business. And this is a huge transaction that you're doing. Yeah, there's some help for fraud. There's some help with the Attorney General. You can take someone to small claims court. You want to avoid all that. So this is a huge expense, and it's an urgent need. But you don't want to spend the money and then you're out of luck once you spend it. So you need to be patient, and it's good to know and to tell other people too. This is a long process. This is a months-long process. Don't think you're going to be back in your house by Thanksgiving. Don't think you'll be in your house by Christmas. This is a long haul. In some cases you might be, but just be realistic about how long it's going to take and talk to people who went through it before. So put up the time up front, ask what happens if there's a change order, right? If I decide I'm going to go ahead and have you paint the back porch because it needs to be done and you're here painting anyway, and that's going to be an extra $300, get that in writing. A contractor can put a lien on your house when it's all said and done, and you have to go through a long process to get that cleared. So when you have your contract, you want to make sure that at the end you're going to get a release of lien, that they'll sign something showing everything's been done, I've been paid, and my subcontractors and material suppliers have been paid. So that way they can't put a lien on your house. I can tell people a little bit about what it costs to get sheetrock put up, flooring, carpeting. You can get estimates on stuff, and that's good for a general ballpark, but that doesn't really tell you the specifics of your house. Depending on how busy the contractor is, and the contractor is interviewing you during this process too. They're wanting somebody who not necessarily just easy money, but who is good to work with, who matches their skill set. So you're interviewing each other. So you want to know. Sorry about that. So I'm just telling you. You want to know what their specialty is. Let's see. Oh, under contracts. So if anybody tells you that they'll work with the insurance company, that's fine. But if they're going to tell you that they're going to get rid of your deductible, they can say that, and what they're saying is they know how much the insurance company will pay, and they're going to add a little bit more of a buffer, and that way you won't have to pay the deductible. Technically, that's fraud. So be aware of that. The contract should be pretty detailed. We have a lot of information about that in here. Don't sign a blank contract, stuff like that. If they ask you for to sign a warranty clause, unless your lawyer reviews it, strike it. The built-in warranty for the state of Texas is great. A lot of times a warranty clause actually diminish what you can get coverage for. And then you have some red flags, door solicitors and things like that. If someone says they're going to be there Monday morning and they aren't, and they don't call you and say sorry, that's a red flag. If someone says they need to pay extra money, that's what I was thinking about, to get to the front of the line, no. As far as the final thing would be, as you're working through the contract, is don't pay all up front. You're going to pay a little bit as you go. A lot of times you'll pay 20% sounds reasonable. A lot more than that, I'd be hesitant. At any point, be ready to the fact that you can give that person the money and they disappear. So don't sink it all and just untrust someone you just met, right? Somebody could also be well-intentioned, but they're having to do a lot of houses at once or having to extend get a lot of credit extended to them. And they could be well-intentioned and honest, your cousin, your nephew, somebody you know, and they go bankrupt in the first place, and there's nothing you can do, you can't get from them, right? Because they don't manage their cash flow and everything changes. So be careful with how much you hand over at once. It's not unusual to pay for the materials when the materials are dropped, but there should be a draw schedule. And if you're working with your insurance company, the mortgage holder, you have a mortgage on your house, so the whoever holds the deed, the bank, they need to be involved in this process as well. Speak to them. They're the ones that need to sign off on the repairs being completed, because if you did do the repairs, you take the money, then they can be left with a house that's damaged. So they need to be involved in that. And there's some notes on the cleanup certificates, not necessarily required. The only thing on tenants, within 5 days, they can evict someone, just like you could terminate your lease within 5 days. And that's because the house is unlivable. There's been some stories of people saying, okay, the landlord told me that I have to be out in 5 days, but there's floodwaters, I can't even get to my house right now. They have to, you're a holdover tenant, they have to give you the opportunity to go in and get your stuff, right? They have to pay you back for the rest of the lease and your security deposit, minus anything that was wrong before. So the onus is on the landlord and the tenant to be reasonable. If they're not, you can take them to small claims court. You don't need a lawyer. The judge is going to expect everyone to be reasonable. So, but the reality is they do have to get you out of that house if it's especially if it's the first floor of a multi-story unit. They don't want the water to migrate. They've got to get in there. If the stuff's been underwater for a while, most of it's probably useless anyway. There are some more details about rent reduction and repairs if your unit is damaged but still livable. And finally, some notes on purchasing and repairing your car. Don't start your car if it's been flooded. Right now, insurance companies, their reinsurance is being triggered, so they are writing off stuff left and right. I had a van that got just minimal amount of water in it, and they just immediately totaled the entire thing. They didn't even look at it, just took photos, and they totaled it. And they gave me good money for it too. But that's not necessarily everyone's experience, but that's generally what's happening. In typical times, in a not unprecedented situation like this, if the carpet was wet, your mechanic can dry out the carpet. If it just got a little bit, the upholstery wet, they'll dry it out and the car will be fine. I mean, they can do some work, change the fluid and stuff. If you have a modern car, electronics and stuff, a computer, and the water got up to the dashboard, it's definitely toast. It's just parts right now. Or it'll get sold down in South America or something, because the electronics getting the dashboard involves your airbag and stuff like that. So as far as trying not to buy a flooded car, you can check Carfax. All Carfax is going to tell you if someone's reported something. It's not going to tell you if it wasn't reported, and people don't have to report it. So again, Carfax, it can prove a negative, it can prove that something was wrong, but a Carfax alone is not going to tell you that everything's fine. If insurance doesn't cover flood damage, apply on your car. FEMA can help with that. The disaster loan can help with that. And your homeowner's insurance policy can sometimes, if it was parked on the property or in the garage, can help with that in general. There's still a market for the damaged vehicle if you don't have insurance. It's not great, but it's not nothing, so it's better than nothing. Purchasing a flood damaged car, here's some notes on what to look for: the mildewy scent, watermarks, stuff like that, rust underneath. Document recovery, try to replace those documents as soon as possible. If you have birth certificate, social security cards, there's separate extra satellite offices and extra resources. That stuff's going a lot faster right now. And then finally, mental health. This is all stressful. This has been a pain in the behind for everybody. There's lots of resources that have popped up, lots of free resources, not just for that, but there's also clinics that do telemedicine now for people that have been affected by the flood too. And we have some links to that as well on here. And then finally, we have our sources at the bottom. So that's about it. I know I went through that fast and I talked fast. I apologize. There's a lot of information. But anything that I just kind of sped through, it is all in here in greater detail. So, question?
Real quick, can you pull up how to access these documents?
Oh, yes. So if someone goes to harveyseminars.org, that'll be brought to our page. There's also a set as a Practice for Good or TXRX Labs, but the easiest link is harveyseminars.org. And you come down here, you see numbers and resources, and we'll make this a little prettier, but right here in this section is going to be the links to everything that I've talked about. This is available in other languages, and flyers you can print and put up in your community. You can also, let's look at the black and white flyer. It also has a phone number, so for people that can't call, that don't have internet access, that aren't comfortable with it, they can call this phone number, 832-481-4123, and leave a voice message in English or Spanish. The message repeats in both, and someone can call them back and help them schedule a time to get this information. We're having, obviously today we're at 205 Robert Street on the east side of downtown at TXRX, but we can also come to you if you have a group, and you got 10 people or more. We'll come off on site in the greater Houston area and do this presentation. And if someone with your organization wants to get this information and talk to me and they'd like to teach it themselves, that's available as well. So, any other questions? All right, guys.
I do.
Oh, yes.
What about sharing it like in a blog post?
Yeah, share this anywhere. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is a Creative Commons license. It'd be nice if you credit us so that people are happy to work with us in the future. Maybe we can have an opportunity to help more people in the future, but this is totally non-commercial. So share it anywhere, share it widely, please do. I encourage it. All right, that's about it. I appreciate it, guys.